Save me, take me with you. Poor Apache widow pleads to a lone Cuman, but he took all of them. The fire had burned out long before the sun rose, but the smell of smoke still hung in the air. Ash covered the ground like a thin gray blanket, reminding everyone of what had been lost. The Apache settlement was quiet in a way that felt wrong. It was not the peaceful quiet of rest, but the heavy silence that comes after sorrow. The wind moved slowly between the empty shelters, carrying whispers of the past. 4 women sat near what used to be the center of the camp. They were widows now, not by choice, not by time, but by fate. Each of them had lost a husband during the same cruel season. The men had gone out strong and hopeful, believing they would return. They never did. What came back instead were broken weapons, torn belongings, and painful news carried by others. The first widow, Ayana, stared at the ground with tired eyes. She had once been known for her laughter. Now her face held lines that had not been there before. She remembered the last morning she saw her husband. He had smiled and touched her forehead gently, promising to come back before the next full moon. That moon had passed many times since then. Beside her sat Nita, quieter and more reserved. She had been strong for so long that people forgot she also needed comfort. She had children to think about, though they now stayed with relatives far away for safety. Every night she wondered if she had made the right choice sending them away. Her heart felt split between fear and hope. The third widow, Kaya, was younger than the others. Her pain was sharp and raw, like a fresh wound. She had not yet learned how to hide it. Sometimes she cried without caring who heard. Other times she sat completely still, as if moving would break her. She had lost not only her husband, but her belief that life was fair. The fourth widow, Tala, was the oldest. Her hair was touched with gray, and her eyes had seen many seasons. She had lost much before, but this loss felt heavier than the rest. She knew how dangerous the world could be, and that knowledge frightened her more now than ever. Without the men, the settlement was weak. Around them, signs of struggle were everywhere. Empty food stores, damaged shelters, and paths that no longer felt safe. The land that once felt like home now felt exposed. Every sound made them alert. Every shadow felt like a threat. Nights were the worst. Darkness brought memories, fear, and unanswered questions. The women helped each other survive day by day. They gathered what little food they could find, shared stories to keep their spirits alive, and stayed close for warmth and comfort. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. Staying there was no longer safe. The settlement could not protect them anymore. People from nearby places had already begun to leave. Some went north, others followed rivers or old trade paths. Each farewell made the camp feel emptier. The widows watched these departures with mixed feelings. Leaving meant risk. Staying meant waiting for danger to find them. One evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, a distant shape appeared on the horizon. At first, it was just a dark dot against the fading light. Yana noticed it first and pointed quietly. The others followed her gaze. The shape grew clearer as it moved closer. It was a man traveling alone. This was unusual. Most people did not travel alone anymore. Lone travelers were either very brave or very desperate. The widows felt both curiosity and fear. They watched from a distance, hiding behind what remained of a shelter. The man moved carefully, as if the land itself could turn against him. He carried few belongings, but he walked with purpose. His clothing and style were different from theirs. He was not Apache. His movements were calm, controlled, and alert. He scanned the area as if expecting trouble at any moment. Tala studied him closely. She had seen many outsiders in her life and knew how to read small details. This man did not look cruel, but he did not look weak either. His eyes held the kind of focus that came from surviving hard journeys. The widows whispered among themselves. Was he dangerous? Was he lost? Would he ignore them, or worse, see them as easy targets? Fear tightened their chests, but something else was there too, hope small but real. The man stopped near the edge of the settlement. He noticed the signs of loss immediately. Burned areas, broken tools, silence where there should have been life. He understood what had happened without being told. He did not rush forward. Instead, he waited, giving space, showing patience. Minutes passed like hours. The sun dipped lower. Finally, Ayana took a step forward. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand tall. If danger was coming, hiding would not stop it. The others followed slowly, forming a line beside her. The man raised his hands slightly, a sign of peace. He spoke calmly, his voice steady. He did not ask many questions. He simply acknowledged their presence and their pain. He introduced himself as a traveler from far lands, moving westward. The widows listened carefully. His words were simple, respectful. He did not look at them with pity nor with hunger for power. He looked at them like people. That alone felt rare. They told him in broken sentences what had happened to their people. They did not share every detail, but enough for him to understand the weight they carried. The man listened without interrupting. His face showed concern, but also caution. As night approached, the air grew colder. The man prepared to move on, knowing that staying too long in one place could bring danger. The widows watched him, feeling time slipping through their fingers. When he turned to leave, something inside them shifted. Fear battled with desperation. Silence pressed down on them, heavy and urgent. Tala stepped forward, her voice firm despite her age. She spoke not with pride, but with truth. They could not survive there much longer. They needed safety. They needed a chance. The man paused, his back still turned. He did not respond immediately. Behind Tala, the other widows felt tears rise. This moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. If he left, they would be alone again. If he stayed, everything could change. The wind blew through the empty camp, carrying the weight of their plea into the darkening sky. The man slowly turned back, his expression unreadable. The night wrapped around them all, holding a decision that would shape every life involved. And in that fragile moment between fear and hope, the story truly began. The man did not answer right away. He stood still, listening to the wind and the quiet breaths behind him. The widows waited, afraid that even a small sound might push him away. The sky darkened fully, and stars began to appear one by one like distant watchers. Finally, the man turned to face them again. His eyes were calm but thoughtful, as if he was weighing something heavy in his mind. He asked simple questions. Where were the others? How long had the settlement been like this? Were there safe paths nearby? His voice was not sharp or demanding. It carried respect. The widows answered honestly. They spoke of loss, of empty days, of fear that grew larger every night. They did not beg. They did not try to convince him with words alone. They spoke the truth because that was all they had left. The man listened. He had traveled far and seen many broken places. He knew what it meant to walk away from danger and what it meant to stay too long. He also knew that traveling with others meant slowing down, taking responsibility, and facing risks that could not be ignored. He had survived alone by trusting only himself. Now, 4 lives stood before him, asking him to change that. He told them his name was Boren. He came from the wide plains, where the wind never stopped moving and the land stretched farther than the eye could see. He had learned to live lightly, carrying only what he needed. He had lost people too, though he did not speak much about it. His past stayed behind his eyes, quiet but present. Boren explained that he was heading towards safer lands, following old routes known only to a few. The journey would be long. There would be cold nights, hard ground, and moments when turning back would seem easier. He made no promises of comfort. He spoke clearly so they would not follow him with false hopes. The widows exchanged glances. Each of them understood hardship. Comfort was not what they were seeking. Safety, direction, and a chance to live without constant fear were what mattered. They told Boren they were ready to work, to walk, to endure whatever came. They were not asking to be carried. They were asking to be led. Boren studied them carefully. Yana stood straight, her grief quiet but strong. Nita's eyes showed worry but also sharp awareness. Kaya looked fragile, yet there was fire beneath her fear. Tala stood firm, like a tree that had survived many storms. These were not weak people. They were wounded but not broken. Night settled fully, and Boren decided it was safer to rest before moving. He chose a spot slightly away from the ruined camp, where the ground was higher and visibility was better. He showed them how to arrange stones and brush to block the wind. His movements were practiced, efficient. The widows watched and learned, grateful for guidance without feeling controlled. They shared what little food they had. It was not much, but it was enough to quiet their hunger. Eating together felt strange at first, like crossing an unseen line. This was no longer a chance meeting. It was becoming something more. As the fire crackled softly, Boren spoke about the land ahead. He described rivers that could be crossed safely, valleys where animals gathered, and places to avoid. His knowledge came from years of walking and watching. The widows listened closely, memorizing every detail. Later, when the fire burned low, silence returned. But it was different now. It was not empty. It held thoughts, memories, and uncertain hope. Kaya stared into the glowing embers, her mind racing. She wondered if trusting a stranger was foolish. She also wondered if staying behind would have been worse. Nita checked the surroundings often, her instincts sharp. She could not forget the responsibility she felt, not only for herself, but for the others. Tala sat quietly, her hands resting on her knees, her breathing steady. She felt the weight of age, but also the strength that came from surviving many seasons. Yana lay back and looked at the stars. For the first time in a long while, she felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not relief, but a small space inside her chest where fear did not fully reach. Before dawn, Boren woke them gently. He believed in moving early before the land became noisy and dangerous. They gathered their few belongings. There was not much to carry. The settlement behind them looked smaller in the gray light, like a memory already fading. As they began to walk, Boren led from the front, setting a steady pace. He did not rush them, but he did not allow long pauses either. Movement was safety. The widows followed, adjusting their steps to match his rhythm. The land changed slowly as they moved away. Dry ground gave way to rocky paths. Low plants brushed against their legs. Birds watched from a distance. Every sound mattered. Boren showed them how to walk quietly, how to watch for signs of trouble, how to stay alert without panic. There were moments when doubt crept in. Kaya stumbled on loose stones and had to stop. Nita helped her without a word. Boren waited patiently, scanning the area while they regained strength. No one complained. Each step forward felt like a choice made again and again. By midday, the sun grew harsh. Boren led them toward a narrow stream hidden between rocks. The water was cold and clear. They drank carefully and filled small containers. Boren showed them how to cover their tracks, how to leave the place as if no one had been there. As they rested briefly, Tala spoke. She thanked Boren not with praise but with honesty. She said that whatever happened next, his choice to stop and listen had already changed their lives. Boren nodded, accepting her words without pride. The journey continued. The widows began to talk quietly among themselves as they walked. Small conversations, shared memories, and gentle laughter returned in short bursts. It felt risky to laugh, but it also felt necessary. As evening approached, Boren chose another resting place. This one was closer to trees, offering shelter and cover. They worked together without being told, gathering wood, setting watch points, preparing for the night. Trust was forming, not through promises, but through action. When darkness fell again, Boren sat apart, sharpening a tool by firelight. He thought about his decision. Taking 4 people with him would change everything. His path would no longer belong only to him. Yet, as he listened to their quiet voices behind him, he felt no regret. The widows lay close together, warmth shared between them. Fear still existed, but it no longer ruled them. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. They had left behind a place of endings and stepped into a journey that demanded courage. Under the wide night sky, footsteps paused, fires dimmed, and hearts slowly adjusted to a new rhythm. The road ahead was long, but it had begun, not with force, but with choice, trust, and the fragile strength of people moving forward together. The 3rd day of the journey began with heavy clouds covering the sky. The air felt different, thicker, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Boren noticed it first. He slowed his steps and raised his hands slightly, signaling the widows to stay close. They had already learned this sign. Without words, they gathered behind him, their eyes alert. The path ahead was narrow and uneven. Rocks lay scattered, and dry branches snapped easily underfoot. Boren chose each step carefully, showing them where to place their feet. He did not speak much while walking. He believed silence was safer than noise, especially in unknown areas. The widows followed his example, learning to listen more than they talked. As they moved deeper into the land, signs of past movement appeared. Old footprints, broken twigs, and disturbed soil told stories without words. Boren knelt once, touching the ground lightly. His face grew serious. Others had passed through not long ago. He did not say who, but the widows understood the warning. Their pace quickened, not from panic, but from focus. By midday, a light rain began to fall. At first, it felt refreshing, cooling their tired bodies, but soon the ground became slippery and the path harder to follow. Kaya nearly fell twice, her legs weak from long walking. Yana stayed close, steadying her when needed. No one complained. Each of them knew the journey was testing not just their strength, but their patience. They stopped briefly under a rocky ledge that offered some cover. Boren checked the sky and the land around them. Rain could hide tracks, which was good, but it could also make travel slower. He decided they would rest only a short while. He shared a few dried pieces of food, reminding them to eat slowly and save energy. As they rested, Kaya finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but filled with emotion. She admitted she was afraid, not just of danger, but of hope. Hope hurt, she said, because it could be taken away again. Nita listened closely and placed a hand on her arm. She told Kaya that fear did not mean weakness. It meant they cared about living. Tala added, her voice calm and steady. She said that life had taken much from all of them, but it had not taken their choice. Walking forward was their choice. Trusting Boren was their choice. And whatever happened next, they would face it together. Her words settled like warm stones in cold water, quieting the fear. Boren listened without interrupting. When Tala finished, he spoke briefly. He said the road ahead would test them more than the days behind. There would be moments when they would question his decisions and their own. He asked only one thing, that when fear rose, they speak it, not hide it. Hidden fear caused mistakes. Honest fear could be managed. The rain slowed and they moved again. The land opened into a wide stretch with low hills. From the top of one hill, Boren stopped and scanned the distance. Smoke rose faintly far away, too far to see clearly but close enough to matter. He adjusted their direction slightly, choosing a longer path to avoid unknown contact. As afternoon faded, they reached a shallow valley with tall grass. The grass moved strangely in the wind, creating the feeling of motion everywhere. Kaya tensed, gripping her hands tightly. Boren showed them how to watch for patterns, how to tell wind movement from something else. Knowledge eased fear, even if only a little. They crossed the valley without trouble, but the tension stayed with them. When they finally reached solid ground again, Nita let out a breath she had been holding for too long. Boren allowed a longer rest then. He knew pushing tired people too far led to mistakes. As they rested, Ayana spoke about her past. She talked about mornings filled with laughter, about shared work and shared dreams. Her voice trembled at first, but grew steadier as she continued. She said she did not want to forget those memories, but she also did not want to live only inside them. The road ahead scared her, but standing still scared her more. Boren nodded. He said memory was not an enemy, it was a guide. The past showed what mattered, but it could not decide the future alone. He shared a small piece of his own story then. He spoke of losing his family to time and conflict, of learning to move rather than remain trapped by pain. He did not go into details, but the weight of his words was clear. As evening approached, they reached a place Boren considered risky but necessary. A narrow pass cut between stone walls. It was the fastest way forward, but also the most dangerous if others were nearby. Boren explained the risk honestly. The widows trusted him enough now to accept it. They entered the pass just as the light began to fade. The walls rose high on both sides, blocking the sky. Every sound echoed. Footsteps felt louder, hearts beat faster. Boren led them through with slow, steady movements, signaling when to stop, when to move. Halfway through, a sound echoed behind them. Not loud but clear enough to freeze blood, a stone shifting, a footstep. Boren signaled them to stop and stay close to the wall. He moved ahead slightly, his posture alert, ready. Moments passed like hours. The sound did not come again. Whatever caused it moved away or never meant harm. Boren waited longer, ensuring safety before continuing. When they finally exited the pass, the widows felt as if they had crossed an invisible line. Something had changed. Night fell soon after. Boren chose a hidden place among rocks and trees. They made no fire this time. Instead, they shared warmth and silence. Fear lingered, but so did pride. They had faced danger together and moved through it without panic. Kaya whispered that she felt stronger than she had the day before. Not because she was no longer afraid, but because fear no longer controlled her. Nita smiled softly. Tala rested her eyes, trusting the night. Yana watched the dark sky, feeling both grief and gratitude. Boren sat watch for part of the night, his senses sharp. As he listened to the quiet breathing behind him, he realized something important. This journey was no longer just about reaching safe land. It was about helping these women find themselves again. And in doing so, he was changing too. When dawn came, pale and gentle, it revealed tired faces, but also determined ones. They rose, stretched aching limbs, and prepared to move again. No one asked if they should turn back. The question no longer mattered. They walked forward as the sun climbed, carrying less fear than before and more trust than they thought possible. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but something new walked with them now, belief. And with each step, the plea that once filled the empty camp grew quieter, replaced by action, courage, and the steady rhythm of lives moving forward together. The next days tested them in ways none of them had expected. The land became harsher, as if it wanted to know how badly they wished to move forward. The ground turned dry and cracked, stretching far in every direction. Water became harder to find, and the sun showed no mercy. Each step felt heavier than the last, but stopping was never an option. Boren led with steady focus. He watched the sky, the soil, the shape of distant hills. His decisions were careful, shaped by experience. Sometimes he changed direction without explanation, trusting signs only he could read. The widows followed without question. Trust had grown strong enough now that words were no longer needed every time. Yana struggled with the heat. Her strength had always come from spirit more than body, and the long days wore her down. Nita noticed first. Without being asked, she shifted some of Ayana's load onto herself. Kaya followed her example, offering help when she could. Tala walked slower but steadier than all of them, her pace even, her breath controlled. At midday one afternoon, Boren stopped suddenly. He raised his hand, signaling silence. In the distance, movement caught his eye. It was faint, but enough to matter. He guided the widows behind a low rise in the land. They crouched, hearts pounding, barely daring to breathe. They waited. Time stretched thin. The movement passed far away, never coming close. Boren watched until he was certain they were unseen. Only then did he signal it was safe to move again. Kaya let out a shaky breath. Fear still came easily to her, but she was learning how to hold it. That evening they reached a narrow stream hidden between stones. The water was low but clear. They knelt and drank slowly, careful not to waste a single drop. Boren showed them how to mark the place quietly, how to remember it without leaving signs others could follow. As they rested, tension finally broke. Yana laughed softly at something small, perhaps at how strange it felt to be alive and moving after so much loss. The sound surprised even her. For a moment the pain eased. The others smiled, holding on to that small joy as if it were something fragile. Later that night, as the stars filled the sky, Boren spoke again about the road ahead. He explained that soon they would reach land where people lived more closely together. Safety would be possible, but new challenges would come with it. Rules, expectations, and unfamiliar ways could feel just as dangerous as open land. Nita asked quietly if they would be welcome. Boren answered honestly, not everywhere, but there were places where those willing to work and live peacefully could find a place. It would require patience and humility. The widows understood. Survival had already taught them both. The following morning brought an unexpected challenge. Kaya woke with fever and weakness. Her steps were unsteady, her face pale. Boren checked her carefully. Pushing forward too fast could cause harm, but stopping too long could invite danger. It was a difficult choice. Boren decided they would slow their pace and stay closer to water that day. Tala supported Kaya as they walked. Yana walked behind, watching carefully. Nita stayed alert, scanning the land. No one complained. The journey was shared, and so were its burdens. As the sun climbed, Kaya's condition worsened briefly. Fear rose again, but Boren found shade beneath a cluster of trees and prepared a simple remedy using plants he knew. He explained each step as he worked, not hiding knowledge. Trust deepened further. They waited through the hottest hours of the day. Kaya rested, her breathing slowly calming. The others sat quietly, listening to the wind in the leaves. It was a pause they did not plan, but one they needed. By evening, Kaya could stand again, weak but stable. Gratitude filled her eyes as she thanked Boren and the others. She admitted she had felt useless. Tala corrected her gently, saying that needing help did not erase strength. Strength also meant knowing when to lean on others. That night, Boren sat apart, thinking deeply. He had taken responsibility for 4 lives. Every decision now carried weight beyond himself. Yet instead of feeling trapped, he felt grounded. Purpose had returned to his path. The next day brought signs of change. The land softened. Grass grew thicker. Birds returned in greater numbers. In the distance, smoke rose straight into the sky, controlled, steady. Signs of settled life. The widows felt both relief and fear. As they drew closer, Boren slowed their pace. He reminded them to stay calm and respectful. First meetings mattered. The widows adjusted their clothing, gathered themselves, and prepared mentally. Their hearts beat fast, but their steps remained steady. They did not enter the settlement that day. Boren chose to camp nearby instead. He wanted them rested and clear-headed before facing new people. That night felt different. The air carried unfamiliar sounds, voices far away, animals kept close, signs of structure and order. Yana lay awake, thinking of all they had crossed. She felt stronger than she had since before her loss. Nita thought of her children and hoped for the first time in a long while that she might one day bring them to a place like this. Kaya felt fear but also excitement. Tala felt peace mixed with caution. At dawn, Boren gathered them. He spoke clearly and calmly. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. He would speak first, but they should stand tall and honest. They were not asking for pity. They were offering their willingness to live and contribute. They approached slowly. Eyes watched them from a distance. Murmurs spread. Boren stopped at a respectful distance and waited to be acknowledged. The widows stood behind him, not hidden, not afraid. Moments passed. Then someone stepped forward. The tension was thick but controlled. Boren spoke in a calm, steady voice. He explained who they were, where they came from, and what they sought: safety, work, peace. The response was not immediate acceptance, but it was not rejection either. Questions were asked. Boren answered. Sometimes he turned to the widows, letting them speak for themselves. Their voices were steady, honest, and clear. By midday, an understanding formed. They were allowed to stay nearby for a short time to prove their intentions. It was not everything, but it was a beginning. As they walked back to their resting place, relief washed over them. The journey was not over, but the road behind them had shaped them into something stronger. Boren looked at the four widows and realized his decision had changed all of them, including himself. He had not saved them alone. They had saved each other. And as the sun set over land that no longer felt empty, hope settled quietly among them. Not loud, not fragile, but steady and real, ready to grow. The days that followed were slow, careful, and full of quiet effort. The widows and Boren stayed just outside the settled area, keeping their distance while showing respect. Each morning, Boren rose early and looked for ways they could be useful without being asked. He helped repair simple tools, carried water, and offered his skills where needed. The widows followed his example, working with calm focus and patience. Yana helped with preparing food and organizing shared spaces. Her gentle manner put others at ease. People began to notice her steady hands and thoughtful eyes. She listened more than she spoke, learning the ways of this new place while holding on to her own sense of self. Nita worked tirelessly. She helped clean, gather supplies, and care for children when asked. Her careful nature and quiet strength earned trust quickly. Some women began to speak with her, asking where she came from, how she had survived. Nita answered honestly, without bitterness. In doing so, she felt a weight slowly lift from her chest. Kaya struggled at first. Her body was still recovering, and her emotions rose and fell without warning. But she refused to give up. She helped where she could, learning new tasks, pushing herself gently. One afternoon, an older woman noticed her effort and showed her a skill she had never learned before. Kaya listened closely, grateful not just for the lesson, but for the kindness behind it. Tala observed everything. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried wisdom. People respected her age and experience. She helped settle small disagreements and offered calm advice. Slowly, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: belonging. Boren remained watchful but hopeful. He knew acceptance did not come overnight. He reminded the widows that patience was part of survival. Each evening, they gathered together, sharing thoughts about the day. They spoke openly about fears and small victories. These moments became the foundation of their new life. After some time, leaders from the settlement called Boren and the widows forward. They had watched carefully. They saw effort, respect, and cooperation. The leaders spoke clearly. The widows and Boren were welcome to stay longer, as long as they continued to live peacefully and contribute. It was not a grand promise, but it was enough. Relief washed over them. Kaya cried quietly, overwhelmed by the feeling of being allowed to stay. Yana closed her eyes and whispered thanks to the life she still carried within her. Nita felt hope bloom for the first time in many seasons. Tala nodded calmly, knowing this was only the beginning. Life slowly found a rhythm. The widows were given small spaces of their own, not grand shelters but safe ones. They worked during the day and rested at night without fear pressing in from every direction. Laughter returned in small moments, soft and careful but real. Boren considered moving on as he had always done. But each day the thought felt heavier. His path had changed. He was no longer a lone traveler passing through. He had become part of something built on shared struggle and trust. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Boren spoke honestly to the widows. He told them he had planned to leave long ago, but now he was unsure. Tala smiled gently and said paths sometimes change for a reason. Yana told him he had already become part of their story. Nita said whatever he chose, they would remember what he had done. Kaya said she hoped he would stay. Boren felt a warmth he had not known in years. He realized that saving others had saved him too, not from danger but from emptiness. Seasons passed. The widows grew stronger in body and spirit. They were no longer known only for their loss. They became known for their skills, kindness, and resilience. They supported others who arrived broken and afraid, just as they once had been. Yana found peace in teaching and guiding younger women. Nita sent word to bring her children, and when they arrived safely, her joy was quiet but deep. Kaya grew confident, her laughter ringing more freely. Tala became a respected voice, her presence steady and grounding. Boren stayed. He helped protect the area, guide travelers safely, and teach what he knew. He no longer walked alone, but he did not feel trapped. He felt rooted. Looking back, the widows sometimes spoke of the night they stood in the ruins of their old settlement, hearts heavy and future unclear. They remembered the plea that rose from desperation. They remembered the man who stopped, listened, and chose not to turn away. They understood now that survival was not just about escaping danger. It was about choosing hope again and again, even when it felt fragile. Their lives were not perfect. Challenges remained. Loss left marks that never fully faded. But they had found something stronger than fear, connection, purpose, and the courage to keep moving forward. And so, the story did not end with rescue or arrival, but with transformation. 4 widows who once stood at the edge of despair became pillars of a new life. A lone traveler found a home he never knew he was searching for. All because one moment of listening turned into a choice, and one choice turned into many lives moving forward, together.